Welcome to everybody on my YouTube channel. I'm Natalia, originally from Moldova. I used to live in France for a while, and now I'm traveling in US. So I'm trying to do for the first time a vlog in English. And my interview is with Nick Zoa, a traveler I've met during my trip around the world in 2019. It was between two airports in between Lebanon and Cyprus. So I think it's better I let Nick introduce yourself. So just tell to my followers who you are and why I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much. So today I'm speaking to you from Michigan. This is my family's home. I'm really sort of a nomad. I don't really have a home in the usual sense, but my family has been here for about 6 generations, and this is where I'm speaking to you from, because when I come to the United States, this is usually where I am. And what you see behind me are my cabin that's been there for 120 years. And Natalia, I invited her to come here and see a piece of America that most Americans don't see. This is way off the beaten path. And the way I travel anyway is I like to avoid places with tourists. So when I'm in the United States, you probably won't find me spending much time in Boston, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. No, thank you. I'll be happy in a little place where the wind blows and the loons make noise at night and it rains on the roof, and that's pretty nice for me. And so I'm here to talk to you about travel and what brings me around the world. And I've been traveling now for about 13 years. And this bag has been with me now for 13 years. And one of the big points that I make in my book is one of the 3 rules of good travel is travel light. And there are lots of wonderful things that will happen to you when you get rid of all those heavy things that you carry around, and you'll enjoy your travels much more. So this is the book, this is my pack, and I have years and years worth of stories to tell about travel and things that I've learned that can make travel fun. And for some people who are basically travel addicts like me, we know what we're talking about when we say travel light. Learn how to say thank you, don't make too many plans, and go out and see the world, because it really is an amazing thing, amazing place. And the pitch that I'm going to make over and over again is that you should go now. And you should go now because the world's changing very fast. It's not just the technologies that are changing. Global warming, increases in population, demand for resources, all of these things are changing our planet, and we want to enjoy what we have now, hopefully preserve it. But if you want to see what is here now, you go now.
I was impressed by your way to travel, especially with this light backpack. I also have my small backpack, but not as small as yours. And we keep in touch for a while because I also went to Africa, and then the pandemic came, and I just go home, start again working, but you was locked down somewhere else.
That's right. You were in a place where you might not want to spend 16 months. And I got off an airplane in Micronesia at a very small island that's 10 miles long called Kushrai. And after that, there were no more airplanes. My flights were all canceled. And that's where while you were back home, I was on this tiny little island called Koshrai, and it really was paradise, and that was where I was marooned for a year and a half.
And you know what's the interesting thing is like to go on a travel like for a long time travel is to go out from your comfort zone, but it's also to adapt another country, another culture, another life. So what's about the life in Kosovo?
Well, okay, in Koshrai, there were some easy things as an American. And not everybody knows this, but there's a relationship between Koshrai and America where an American citizen can go there and stay for as many years as he wants to without a visa. And I worked. So when I realized I was going to be marooned there, I went over to the college and I asked them if they needed a teacher. And they said, "Can you start today?"
Of course, I think there's a lot of countries where we can do volunteering.
Yes.
Yes, and they are very happy that we can help them. By the way, I have a degree of a teacher of French and speech therapy, so I think for me it also it's very easy to get somewhere and to have like small jobs or volunteering. But what about you? Because you have this big experience of life, but also a big professional.
Well, it does help to have a couple of graduate degrees. I have a PhD in seismology, and I've done a lot of research and relief and recovery work in areas that have had earthquakes and tsunamis. And I did actually have a somewhat official reason for going there in the first place, which was to examine their preparedness for tsunamis. And there are many islands in the Pacific Ocean. They're all subject to tsunamis, and they have varying degrees of preparedness. Some are better prepared than others. And so there was a motive there, and some of the work that I ended up volunteering for involved tsunami preparation.
Okay, so you stayed like one year and a half in Kosovo?
Actually, I was there for exactly 500 days.
Wow.
It was a funny thing. When I finally checked the date of my departure and the date I was arriving, I had to fill out a form to say how many days I had been there. So I calculated it. It worked out to be 500 days and about 30 minutes. Because when I came in on a flight 500 days earlier, it was the same flight that had taken off that I took off to leave. So I was there 16 and a half months, 500 days, it's about the same. And I never expected to be anywhere that long. I've never been anywhere in my entire life that I stayed in one place for that long a time. Even as a child, my parents would have taken me to visit the grandparents. So I don't think anybody spends 500 days going no more than 10 miles, because that's as far as I could go.
Okay. What about this a new comfort zone? Because staying so long in a country is like you already adapt maybe some of cultural things from the country, but also this comfortable zone. Like, oh, I'm chilling here, I'm working, I enjoy food, I enjoy cultural traditions.
I loved being there. In fact, if you say this, I have to tell you, I had a feeling while I was there in the last 3 or 4 weeks that there was glue on the bottoms of my feet. I didn't feel able to leave. I didn't want to leave. I felt it was an uncomfortable feeling. It was a feeling I'm not familiar with, that I actually wanted to stay. And if it hadn't been for my family in America calling me home for family events, reunions, family gatherings, and I do have children in the United States. If it hadn't been for that, I would have stayed.
Yeah. It's all about the attachments we have with our native country, and also about what we want to keep going and keep doing in life, and especially in travel, like a traveler.
I mean, I was being adopted by families. I was learning the language. I began to feel at home.
Ah, yes.
And these people, because they only get 1,200 visitors in a good year. In a good year, this island gets 1,200 visitors. For them to have a visitor who comes and stays for a whole year, and I was their only visitor for a whole year, they were very hospitable. And they really didn't want me to leave. And I could feel it even in my own heart that there was still a lot I could have done if I'd stayed. And there was a contract sitting on the dean's desk saying, anytime you want to sign the contract and teach for another year, you can stay. So it was hard to leave, and it was an unusual feeling for a nomad to have that feeling.
What about Kosovo? Can you talk about something?
All right. I mean, in many ways, to make it simple, it is a tropical paradise, very close to the equator. It is cool enough that you don't need air conditioning. It's warm enough that you don't need clothes. There's beaches all the way around the island. 1,000,000 years ago, it was a volcano active, but it's now a quiet island with the nearest island is 350 miles away. 6,000 people live on the island, and everyone there is sort of related to each other. And because of this, they all treat everyone, each other, as families. This is a Christian nation. It's a Christian island. The biggest social event every week is to go to church. Churches often involves potluck meals afterwards, and you get coconuts, you get bananas, you get papayas, and then they take the fish that they catch, and they mix it with taro or breadfruit, and they make this big, thick soup, and they throw a lot of peppers into it. So you've gotten a hot and spicy fish soups at these events. And I got very used to some very good food there. And we had unlimited lobsters and crabs too. So with the combination of these friendly people and all the great food, you can see why I kind of liked being there. I'm glad that I didn't do what I originally planned to do, which is to spend only 3 days. I would never have learned what a wonderful place this is. And again, as I say, it's very remote, and very few people know about this place. And even I am a world traveler. I'd never heard of this island until I got there. But it was only because United Airlines stops there on its way between Guam and Hawaii that I even thought, well, let's get off the plane and see what's here. And that's led to my being marooned there, because I got off there 48 hours before the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic, and the United Airlines ceased all their traffic in and out of those islands.
Nick, when we had our dinner yesterday, you talk about the food, and there are so many interesting things to know about food in Kosovo.
Yes. Well, people eat very well there, but they eat different things, and they have a limited diet. We had all the coconuts that you could possibly eat, unlimited coconuts, unlimited bananas, almost unlimited tangerines. And it's a funny tangerine because in Kosovo they have a tangerine that's like a cross between a mandarin and a lime, very tart and very green when they're ripe. And some of the vegetables could be produced were eggplant, okra, tomatoes, lettuce, but that was really about it for vegetables. And of course, the fruits, we also had papayas and pineapples. The fish were wonderful, and you really could not starve on a place like Koshrai, because when the tide goes down, the tide goes out, you get a bucket and you get a stick, and you walk out onto the reef and you hit the fish with the stick and put it in the bucket. That's how you go fishing, and a child could catch 10 fish in 10 minutes that way. So no one ever dies of starvation on this lovely island. And there were some foods that we didn't see. There's no cheese, there's no milk. It's imported, actually. You can get imported milk, but it's expensive. And of course, this is because the only animals on the island are the cats, the dogs, and the chickens and the pigs. There's no grass, there's no grazing, there's no sheep, there's no goats, there's no cows. So I didn't eat any red meat there the whole time. Sometimes imported meat came in, but it was very expensive. And besides, we had all the other fish that we wanted to eat. Oh, and then finally, I should add that we had 2 wonderful sources of shellfish. There were lobsters and there were crabs, big crabs. They were mangrove crabs with claws like this. And the first time I saw one, I said, well, where's the rest of the lobster? Because these were such big claws. But I said, oh, no, these are just the claws. We throw the crabs away, but we just keep the claws and cook them.
Do the mangrove crab have poison in?
No.
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 Not like the cocoa crab that you must do in a different way to
That's
cook
right.
it.
No, the mangrove crab is very sweet and very easy. And there are so many of them. And they come out at night, And often you see them going across the roads. And when they're going across the roads, they're right there in the open, you can grab them because they're going from the jungle out to the mangroves or from the mangroves back to the jungle when they go back and forth.
What about weird food like cats,
Yes.
dogs?
Well, we did eat dogs. Actually, I didn't eat dogs, but I should say something about the dogs in Koshrai. In Koshrai, there is no veterinarian. So there are dogs, and the dogs breed, and they make puppies, and then there are more dogs, and they breed, and then there are more dogs. And all the dogs are sort of the typical dog that you'd expect to see. They're medium size, they're brown, they're very smart, but they don't usually have any kind of behavioral training. So some of the dogs are very naughty, they're very bad, and they'll eat your garbage if you leave it out. But the bigger problem, and this is the only problem that the police have, is that the dogs sometimes bite people. And if a dog bites you, you go to the police station, you report the dog bite. And there are so many dogs on the island that they have a very simple solution to how to deal with dogs that bite. If a dog bites a person, the police will go and shoot and kill the dog. And then one of three things will happen. If the person who is bitten by the dog wants the dog, he will have the dog and he'll eat it. Otherwise, the person who owns the dog, he gets second choice. And if nobody wants the dog, the police will take it and they'll eat it. So we eat the dogs. I didn't eat any dogs when I was there. I don't think I could do that. But I was bitten 3 times, so either the owner or the police got my dog that bit me. And so we did have dogs. There are some cats. The cats, people don't eat the cats. And so that was it.
And what about alcohol, the drinks? Like they have their own alcohol, imported alcohol?
We had imported alcohol, and that was the most common kind. But there are only 4 kinds of imported alcohol, really. There was Budweiser in cans. There was a California red wine in boxes. There was a California white wine in boxes. And then there was an inexpensive vodka. And that was pretty much it for the alcohol. But this is an island where alcohol has always been somewhat forbidden and not approved in an effort to minimize the amount of alcohol that people drink. They have a policy now of a drinking permit. If you want to drink alcohol, you go to the police station, you pay $20, and you have the permission to buy or drink alcohol on the island for 1 year. And you must present your drinking permit when you go to the liquor store to buy your alcohol.
So how expensive it is, the permit for drinking
it's $20.
alcohol?
Yeah, the drinking
for the
permit
1 year.
is $20 for 1 year. And of course, that's a lot of money in a place like Koshrai, where the typical minimum wage in Koshrai is $1.50 per hour. So for $20, that's a lot. That's a day's labor or more. So not everybody had drinking permits. Of course, I'm sure that to some extent there might be one person who will have a drinking permit who will buy the beer for his friends. But even the beer was expensive because the beer coming in imported was Budweiser at $2.50 a can.
This book, I think it's not only about Koshrai, it's all about your experience of travel, of life. And you told me you traveled about 13 years now?
That's right. For 13 years I've been traveling. That was when I left California for good.
Okay, and how many countries you visited?
I've now been to 158 countries.
So I will put on my video all this map, because you have a map with all the countries you visited till now.
That's right, yes.
But you didn't visit my country.
I hope you're going to invite me, I hope.
I already did.
Yes, you did. Okay, good. I will come.
Yes. So I'm from Moldova, so it'd be a big pleasure to have you in my house in Moldova, because it's so small country for the people don't know. Whereas the Moldova is between Romania and Ukraine. It's very tiny country. And also you said I'm homeless by choice and lives as a gypsy scholar. What it means?
Well, a gypsy scholar is someone who travels but is studying. I study as I travel. Often I find work where I'm teaching or I'm doing research. So it's a form of scholarship. So much of travel is education. travel is the best teacher, and I sometimes am the teacher, and sometimes travel is the teacher to me. So I am a gypsy, and I'm traveling. I'm learning as I go. So that makes me a scholar.
Yes. So what is your feeling about your travel? Like it makes you happier?
Yes, yeah. Well, somewhere I read once that the cure to unhappiness is to learn something new. And I think that if I didn't learn something, I would feel sad. But instead, when you travel, especially as you travel as you and I both do, you learn new things every day, things that you never would have known about, things that you might not even known to Google. I mean, you can sit there and Google, but you keep learning the same things. You go travel and you learn things. I say, oh, they do this here. And why didn't anybody ever tell me about this place? You're constantly learning new things. That's what travel does to you. It makes you learn new things.
True, but I can tell you, even when I Google or I have mass media, I don't know, from a magazine or from TV, it's not the same thing when you in the country and you speak with the local people, you experience so many different situations, so it's not the same thing.
That's right. No, you never know until you've been there.
Yes, for sure. What is the most impressive country or countries for you? It's
Well,
very difficult to.
That's a very difficult question because, I mean, do you like food? Do you like dancing? Do you like music? Do you like animals? Do you like mountains? Do you like the ocean? And I mean, I could give you a list of maybe some of my 15 favorite countries. Is that what you'd like? All right. Very quickly, I like Italy for the food. I like Morocco for the Arab culture. I like Cuba for the dancing. The scenery in Chile is so wonderful. Although it's not a country, I'll call it an area, the Galapagos Islands, for its animals, which are unlike anything else. Another place that has fantastic scenery and animals is Alaska. In Japan, I love the feeling of being in Japan, where everything is so calm, and yet everything works. Very high-tech at the same time. I'm a big fan of Indonesia. Indonesia is huge. 4 or 5 time zones.
More than 22,000 islands?
Let's see, I think it was the number is 17,000 islands, but that depends on how small they are, whether or not you count them. And there's an ocean of cultures just in Indonesia. And then I'm very fond of India because it is so complicated. At the same time, everyone has a love-hate relationship with India. You love the place and you hate the place. I spent a lot of time in Thailand, and the Thai people, they smile so nicely. And their food is so good.
Yes.
And then finally, I want to mention Ethiopia, which is one of my favorite real African countries because they were never a colony. They are themselves. And finally, I want to put a shout out to the Republic of Georgia. I loved the wine, the people, the food, the music, the dancing. There was something that just naturally came to me. Maybe some other lifetime I was a Georgian. And
yes.
let's not forget Micronesia,
Oh, yes.
where I just spent 16 months. I have to say, those are the kindest, nicest people I've ever met.
Oh, interesting. And you told me the best coffee it was in,
Ethiopia.
because there's the coffee origins.
That's where coffee came from. That's right.
Yes.
And it's a ritual.
Yes,
It's a
of
ritual.
course.
When you make a friend, the first thing you have to do is go have coffee together. And the coffee is so good, and everybody knows how to make coffee there. And it comes in these nice big cups. It's steaming. It's hot. It's got cream all swirled around in it. Yeah, they know what to do with coffee. They really do.
Yes, it's a traditional thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Nick, the travel is not only about drinks, food, dancing, culture thing. It's also about sex.
Yes.
What is your? What about sex in Kosraye?
Oh, sex in Kosraye is a very funny situation. I haven't seen this before, this particular situation. And let me explain. In the middle of the 19th century, 2 very conservative, traditional, puritanical missionaries came to Kosraye from Massachusetts. And they taught all the people in Kosraye that the women had to wear shirts and they couldn't drink alcohol. There were no more slavery. But one of the most significant things that they taught the Kosrayans was that you cannot have sex until you're married. And they thought about this and decided, okay, this is the new rule, no sex until you're married. And so they all got married. and they got married quite young. And then even today, the rule still applies that you cannot have sex until you're married. But the way they interpret it is that you can have sex if you're married with anyone else who is married. And so in this time of the pandemic, with no tourists coming in, the one resort that's there has been set up sort of with rooms by the hour, so that couples who want to come and spend time together in privacy can do so, which is very convenient if the man doesn't want to go to her house because he doesn't want to see her husband, and she doesn't want to go to his house because she doesn't want to see his wife. So that's how it works in Koshrai, and they seem to like it that way. And although it's not exactly approved, it is condoned, and that's how they do it now. No sex until you're married.
Hey Nick, what about after this long stay in Kosovo? What about the feeling coming back home in the US?
Yes. Well, I knew there would be culture shock because I was going from one place very simple, very few cars, one little road, and everybody knowing each other, into Los Angeles, which was the point of entry into the United States. I was expecting the culture shock, but in fact, it was more like planet shock. I felt as though from Koshrai, I had left Earth and I had come to Mars. And this is Mars. And I got off the plane and I was surrounded by people who really seemed like aliens, even though they were Americans. It was like being in an alien country or an alien planet. And I saw more cars and more people in the first 30 minutes in Los Angeles than I had seen in a year and a half.
When I've seen the title of your book,
Go
Now, I smile, find myself inside. I could imagine the subject of the book, it was the travel. But how the idea of writing a book came out, and how long it took to you to write this book?
Yes. Well, I've always loved to travel. Traveling is, it's my passion. I'm a hodophile. I love to travel. And I'm a gypsy. And one of the things what happens when you travel is that things happen. Things happen that don't happen in your daily life. And you end up with stories. The more you travel, the more stories you have, the more adventurous the travels are, the better your stories are. And I began to write when I first started traveling, just in my journal, the stories, the things that happen, particularly the strange stories, unusual stories, the surprises. And actually, I really, some of my stories started even in the 1980s. And I wanted to write a book, but I never had time. And I just kept accumulating these stories, notebooks full of stories. And sometimes eventually I had a computer. So computer word processed documents full of stories. And so finally I got to Koshrai. And there were many days in Koshrai when it really was a relaxing thing to do, to just sit and listen to the rain or listen to the surf on the reef and just write. And it was a perfect place to write because I had a quiet place to stay. I had no telephone, so the phone never rang. And I could just sit and write. And at that point I discovered that I really liked writing. And I went back through all these old stories. I began to say, oh, this story is like this story. Let's put these together. Here's another story that's like this story. Put them together. And so I have in here really about 30 stories covering about 40 years. Some of my favorite stories, the stories that were strangest or most surprising, maybe the most frightening, and really probably the most that all have in common, stories that taught me something. So this isn't just a storybook. It's a story. It's a book about what I've learned as I've traveled. So the main thing I've learned, of course, is that you should go now. Don't wait. We're not getting any younger. If you want to see the world is changing too. So if you don't go now, there won't be the same world 20 years from now. See it now.
Nick, thank you very much for this interview. I enjoyed so much. Thank you very much to invite me in your house to experience this American family. 4 generations?
6 generations.
6 generations. Oh my God, this is so. It's one exception, no? I'm so happy because in 3 days I've seen so many things and experienced so many things We sailed on the lake, we went to play golf, we visited big rapids. We did so many things.
And you met at least 50 of my cousins.
Yes, in one day. Yes, and of course, I invite you, dear followers, to go on Amazon. I'll put the link there, so you buy this amazing book, Go Now, and especially because you like all this travel life, and it's exciting. For me, it's very exciting. So my wish is to go with you and to experience your way of travel.
And I look forward to traveling with you too somewhere. And there's a lot more of America that I can show you that I know very well, and I hope to get that chance to do. And then I do want to come see your country, and Romania and Moldova at
Yes.
least,
Yes.
and maybe more.
Yes, yes, of course. And dear followers, don't forget a comment, a share, and a like, of course. Cheers!
Mm. And thank you, thank you.
Thank you to you. Thank you. Oh, good wine.
Not bad.